Over the past several days, you guys have worked on your Characteristics of Life lab. Remember that this lab is a summative grade, and as such, you need to make sure that you guys are putting a full effort into this so that you can buffer your grade a little bit and continue to build on the successes that you've already had. Remember, we've also been working with a partner. You guys are going to be also working on this final summative lab write-up with your partner. Now let's say Sam and Joe are working on this lab together. Both Sam and Joe are going to end up turning in their lab, but they need to decide which form they want to get the feedback on and which form they want to have graded. So pick the one that's done the most neatly. Sam, let's say, is the one that's going to turn that in, and Joe is the one that's just going to turn his in to get it checked off. I'm just going to check that Joe did his and see that he participated and worked well with Sam in completing this, and that Sam didn't have to do it all by himself. Sam is going to turn his form in to be graded and get feedback on, and that's going to count for both Sam and Joe. So when Sam turns his in, he's going to write Sam and Joe up here. That way I know to give both Sam and Joe credit. Alright, remember that I am grading you on your reading and writing. As you guys are writing in your final lab summary, you need to make sure that you aren't just giving me simple one-word answers or one-sentence answers. I'm looking for more complex answers that show thoughtfulness and that support your claims with details, evidence, and data from the experiment. If you're not doing this, you're going to end up in the 1 to 0 range. If you're giving me answers that only support their claims and their ideas with a few pieces of evidence, then you're going to fall in this 2 to 3 range. If you want a 4, you need to support your claims with multiple pieces of evidence and examples. I'm also going to be grading you on your graphing. Remember, all good graphs, they have the necessary components of a title, axis labels, and they have good organization. You also need to make sure that your graph accurately represents your data. If you are doing a graph that shows change over time, for example, how heart rate changes over time, then you would want to do a line graph. If you are showing a comparison of something, so maybe you're comparing apples and oranges and how many there are, then you would use a bar graph. You might also use the bar graph in our reaction time lab. Down here is a writing prompt, and this is where you're going to have to really summarize what you learned from me from this lab. You need to write, at the very least, 2 very detailed paragraphs that summarize what is life. And you need to include examples from the lab, statements from the lab, and data from the lab, and then also from your everyday life to support your summary. As you're writing, I'd like for you to please highlight and underline your main ideas. That way you can identify what you believed your main ideas were, and I can easily check to see that you've supported all of your main ideas with examples from the lab and from your everyday life. If you need to go on another sheet, do it on loose leaf paper or type it. You may do that. Please staple those things together and staple them to the form, and put that staple in the upper left-hand corner of your lab. On this page, I'm just looking for a final draft of all the data that you collected on the homeostasis lab. And remember, you can find that in Notability, where we have been working for the past several days. Remember that we did not collect blood pressure data. We did not collect exercise after 1 minute or 8 minutes data. But all of this other data you can go ahead and you can enter. Also in this table below, we did not do boy average and girl average. All of this other data you can enter. To get your class average heart rate, if you did not yet calculate that, remember that you can access class data on Blackboard under biology, and then unit 1, and then go to the characteristics of life lab, and then you're going to want to go to homeostasis lab results. There you can calculate or find the data for your class average heart rate. Remember, to find an average, you take A plus B plus C plus D, and you divide by however many there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we would divide that by 4 to get our average. This page here, you are going to be calculating, or not calculating, I'm sorry, you're going to be graphing your calculations and your data from the previous page. So you are graphing your homeostasis lab data here. Make sure that you have a detailed title that thoroughly explains what you did in each experiment, that you have appropriate axis labels, that you have an appropriate scale that fits your data. Notice that this graph has both heart rate data and breathing rate data on it. So you might have to come up with a key as well. You will also have to come up with 2 different scales. The graph below, this has your skin tone data and your perspiration level data. If you did not take accurate data on this, as many of you did not, I would like you to create a graph that would predict what you believe you should have seen. So do you think that skin tone should have got more red? So maybe your scale over here is redness. And so you would go 1, 2, 3, and you would make a key over here saying that 1 is not red, 2 is rose red, 3 is dark red, 4 is profusely red, something like that. Perspiration level, you could do the same on this side, come up with a different scale, and then you could show how that changed over time. And then finally, in the last few pages, you're just giving me a final write-up of what you did in your reaction time lab from the previous class period. Just make it nice and neat and easy to read. This covers all of the different steps of the scientific method that we covered, and it gives you some prompts on how to write things. Please make sure that your introduction, your hypothesis are clear. You've included all materials that you needed. Your procedure is detailed so that it can be reproducible. So make sure it's detailed and easy to reproduce. You're also going to have to create your own graph. You're probably going to have to decide whether you want to do a line graph to show change over time or a bar graph to show comparisons. You may want to look back to what you did in your previous reaction time lab to see what type of graph you created and what type of title you created as well, as an example. And then based on the data that you collected, you should come up with a discussion and a conclusion. This is going to be due to me at the beginning of class on Tuesday. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me over the weekend. However, if you email me on Monday night, I will not answer your questions because you need to be responsible and work on this in a timely manner, and then also be respectful of my time as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday. Thank you.